Hi, first grade. We're going to start a new project today, and it is going to be another two-part project, so save this part of the project until you get your assignment next month, and we will finish it. So for this project, we're going to learn about three things. We're going to continue to talk about shapes, but we're going to focus on organic shapes, and those are shapes that we find in nature. So we find them in the woods, under the water, or in the sky. Organic shapes can be clouds, the sun, teardrops, raindrops, a star. Under the water, it could be a shell, it could be seaweed, a fish, a starfish, coral. And today we're really going to focus on the organic shapes that we find in the wood, especially leaves. But also rocks and animals, and we could use puddles, but we're going to really focus on organic leaf shapes for this project. We're going to take those organic leaf shapes and we're going to put them in a pattern. And a pattern, which we know from kindergarten, is anything that repeats. And we're going to stick to a really simple either A pattern, which would be just leaf, 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 or an A-B pattern where we could switch off on two different leaves and repeat them. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is texture. Texture is the way that something feels or looks like it might feel. So let's all touch our hair right now. How does your hair feel? Does it feel spiky? Does it feel soft? Does it feel stringy? Does it feel wet or dry? How does your cheek feel? Does your cheek feel soft? Does it feel warm? Does it feel bumpy? Touch the bottom of your shoe. Is that bumpy? Hopefully it's not slimy. Maybe it feels dry or dusty. So we're going to focus on organic shapes, which are from nature, patterns, which are things that repeat, and texture, which is the way that something feels or looks like might feel. So let's get started. So for this project, we're going to focus on three basic ideas. One is organic shapes. So we're going to take the element of shape, we're going to look a little bit deeper, and we're going to focus on just the organic shapes. The next principle of art we're going to talk about is pattern, which is what we can use colors, lines, and shapes to make something interesting like a pattern. And then the final thing is, again, an element of art, we're going to talk about texture. So we already know about geometric shapes. Geometric shapes are shapes that we learned about in kindergarten, shapes that we learn about in math, or we can call them just the basic shapes. Those are our circles, rectangles, triangles, squares, etc., the basic shapes. But we're not talking about those today. Today we're going to learn about another group called the organic shapes. What are organic shapes? Well, the word organic means natural, so organic shapes are shapes that we find in nature. We wouldn't necessarily find a square or a triangle in nature, would we? Organic shapes are shapes that we see in the sky, so like a bird or the moon or a cloud or a water drop. We can find them in the water, under the water, like a starfish, a regular fish, seashell, coral, and we can find organic shapes in the woods. Leaves, flowers, rocks, grass, footprints. So organic shapes are found in nature, and usually I try to remind my students to think about shapes we would see in the sky, under the water, or in the woods. We can also use shapes, colors, or lines to make a pattern. A pattern is anything that repeats. So here's some basic patterns, and usually we use the letters A and B to describe what kind of a pattern they are. So the purple, yellow, purple, yellow, purple, yellow, purple, yellow is just repeating two things. A, which is purple, and B, which is yellow. Then we say repeat. A, B, purple, yellow, purple, yellow, purple, yellow. If you look at the green and blue pattern, that's an ABB pattern. That's a little bit more tricky. So it's green, blue, blue. Then we repeat. Green, blue, blue. Then we repeat. Green, blue, blue. We are going to make patterns with organic shapes. We're going to use leaves. So, in order to keep it simple, if you want to, you could do just an A-B pattern. Here I have orange leaf, green leaf, orange leaf, green leaf, orange leaf, green leaf. So when you are making your project, you can pick 2 different kinds of leaves, make a whole bunch of them, and just repeat them one after another in an A-B pattern. If you want to get a little trickier, you could make an AABB pattern, which is also kind of simple. So you would do 2 of the first kind, then 2 of the second kind, then repeat. 2 of the first, 2 of the second, then repeat. 2 of the first, 2 of the second. And if you really want to be a tricky trickster, you can do an AAABBB pattern. So here I have 3 of the first kind of leaves, 3 of the second kind of leaves. Repeat. 3 of the first, 3 of the second, then I would repeat. And this will make more sense when we look at the project in the next part of our slide. The last thing we're going to talk about is texture. Now, texture is an element of art that is the way that something feels. Here we have so many different kinds of textures. We have rough, furry, sandy, grassy, bumpy, smooth, soft, wet, hard, sticky, hairy. Oh my! There are so many words that we can use to describe texture. How do we show texture in our artwork? Well, one way is to create a texture rubbing. I love texture rubbing. We use the side of a naked crayon and we put something that has texture underneath our paper and rub the crayon on top of our paper. And look at the great things we can make with texture rubbings. So, get your supplies and let's get started.
There's a lot of materials for this project. We're going to break it up into 2 parts. So for the first part, you need paper. You can use white paper. You can use colored paper. A light color will work best. Even newspaper will work fine. So if you want to get a little creative with your choices of materials, then think about it. Think about those things. You're going to need a pencil. And then you're going to need anything flat with texture. So texture, as we know, is the way that something feels. You can use like a Lego plate, I guess it's called. Some other things I found a cup. You can take a piece of cardboard, okay, and then you can take the cardboard and peel, or ask an adult to help you peel the top part of the cardboard off. And then you have super bumpy textures. So we have a lot of bumpy textures here. Those are going to be the best. And then I have the bottom of a shoe. Try to make sure it's cleanish. If you can get outside, a foundation or a brick wall is great. A driveway that's dry, stone around your fireplace inside. If you have a board book with textures inside it, that would work great. So inside this book, I have some really funky textures that we can use. So get creative, find some textures. You really don't need that many. 2 is pretty much enough. And I'm sure we all have a shoe, hopefully that's clean enough that we can do a texture on. So you'll need some textures, a piece of paper, a pencil, and then you're gonna need some naked crayons. What? What's a naked crayon? Well, a naked crayon is a crayon that has no paper on it. It's not wearing any clothes. It's totally naked. And we're going to use the crayon to help us make a texture rubbing. And the colors I'm going to choose are going to be earthy colors because we're going to make a picture of like the woods. So I'm going to use brown, I have green, and I have black. I think that those would probably be the best. Tans, any of the greens, maybe yellow, If you want to try some other colors, you're the artist, so see how it comes out. I'm not requiring you to use a special color. So I have my 3 colors here. 2 or 3 is pretty good. If you want to add details, you can use markers as an option, and you will need scissors and glue. Okay, so paper, pencil, naked crayons, textures, scissors, glue, maybe markers, maybe paints if you want to, watercolors. See where the project takes you and how creative you want to be. So step 1 for the project is to create a frame. So you're just going to take your pencil and you're lightly going to draw a frame around the outside. Now, my frame is definitely not perfect, and you want to make it light because you really don't want the line from the frame to be part of your picture. Inside the frame, we're going to make textures. So find your flat things and find your naked crayons. We are going to use the side of the crayon to make a rubbing. So watch, I have my shoe is right here underneath, and I'm laying the crayon down, and I'm not moving the shoe. I'm just rubbing the side of the crayon over the shoe and recording the texture. How neat! It will not work if you use the tip of your crayon. So if you use the top of your crayon, it's just going to come out like lines. So try to make sure that you use the side of the crayon. You can use lots of colors and vary your textures. So now I'm using the cardboard, and look how cool that's coming out. And you're going to fill the whole space inside of your frame with your textures. And if you go a little bit outside of the frame, that's okay, because we will be gluing some shapes outside. But we're going to get to that in a moment. So now I'm using my Lego plates. Okay. Now, if you want to, an optional challenge is you can layer these textures and layer the color. So look how cool it looks with the dots over the lines there. And I layered 2 colors. So let's see what we can find in this dinosaur book. I'm excited about this. Ooh, that's so neat. And another optional, zigzags. Another option would be to do a layer of paint over this when you're all finished. Oh, this one's pretty cool. So if you really wanted to, you could do like a quick layer. I think I really want this to look a little greener. So I'm going to do a quick layer of green over, and wow, that's really making some of my things pop. I may actually do some yellow, because that green is so close to the green I already used. And it's really going to make it pop. Watercolor is totally optional. If you really do want to use watercolor and you don't have it at home, reach out to me and we can arrange for a pickup of watercolor, or for watercolor to be sent home. Mrs. TH loves to paint. I'm sure you all remember that from last year. Okay, so that's our first part is the frame. Second part, create the textures inside. There's really no mistakes, and guess what? Next week we are going, or next month we're going to put something right in the center, so we'll hide anything that you might not like. Okay, so the next part is we are going to fill the outside of the frame with a pattern of organic leaf shapes. So I just kind of gathered things. I found part of a box from Christmas. Yes, I still have garbage around my house from Christmas. That is green and brown. I found 2 scraps of green paper. I cut up a paper bag for brown, and I found this beautiful green piece of cardstock, which I might not want to cut up, but we'll see. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out some organic leaf shapes. Now, I'm going to keep this folded up because here's a pro tip for you. If I cut this out at the same time, then I'm going to get several of the same shape. They don't have to be exactly the same, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to just draw 2 leaf shapes, which is kind of like an oval with a point on either end. And then I'm going to cut out all those layers of brown paper all at the same time. And I end up with 3 of the same leaf. I'll do that again over here. So I'm going to do that with the brown paper and the green paper, and you can do 2 different shaped leaves, 2 different colored leaves. If you really want to get crazy, then you can also you can add in more than 2. So I'm going to fold this paper and cut out some leaf shapes. Wait a minute, Mrs. TH, you didn't even draw them first. That's okay. If you want, if you're feeling inspired, like a marker or a pencil is just going to slow you down, feel free to just free cut. So we're just going to do a bunch of shapes in different colors so that we can make a pattern. Make sure you have enough to go all the way around your picture. Okay, are you interested in making this more complicated? A couple things you can do. You can snip triangles all along the sides and have some pretty funky looking leaves. Or you can use crayons or markers and enhance some of these. And I almost forgot, if you don't have colored papers, then just draw some leaves and color them in and cut them out. That's absolutely fine. Or you can use newspaper, or you can use colors that you find in a magazine. If you find a page that's mostly green or mostly brown, that's cool too. So wow, look at that. I just cut out little snips and that looks pretty neat. Or you can enhance your leaves by drawing a straight line down it long ways and little tiny diagonal lines coming out of the sides. Do you have to make these look like this? Absolutely not. If you just have 2 different colored leaf shapes, that is absolutely fine. And again, if you have white paper and you just draw the leaves and color them in and then cut them out, that is okay too. Okay, so then for our final step, we're going to take that paper, getting excited about this, then we're going to create a pattern. So if you remember from our lesson, a pattern is anything that repeats. So you can take just 2 colors and repeat them, green, brown, green, brown, green, brown, and you're going to glue them in these spaces. Or if you want to make it a little more complicated, you can make it light green, dark green, brown, or however you want it to be. So I have light green, dark green, light green, dark green, right? Brown. So here I did green, brown, so I'll do brown and then green, brown and then green, brown and then green. Boy, am I glad I made a lot. You can always add more if you need to. Okay, so then if I'm following this pattern here, but like I said, you only need to do an AB pattern. And if you really want to simplify it and you really only want to do one type of leaf, make sure you repeat it in a pattern if you want that credit. Oops. And mix this up. So it should be light green, dark green, brown. Light green, dark green, brown. So I have brown, green, brown, green, brown, green, green, brown, green, brown, green, brown, light green, dark green, brown, light green, dark green, brown. light green, dark green, brown, light green, dark green, brown. So glue it on, and then you have your frame, and we'll be using this frame and we'll be putting something pretty cool inside. I am going to add one more step. After you take your picture and upload it, please make sure you clean up your mess. Don't leave that mess for your parents. And upload it. Do not lose this picture. You will be using it next month. Be creative. I can't wait to see what you can make.